start to put tension on my string drawback, I was like, okay, I'm gonna smoke.
It's him. You can look at the horns when he's dead. I'm in the zone. Let the arrow go is perfect.
So when they lose their front shoulders, you start, that's how you know they're smoking.
Went about 5-10 more yards. We probably went 20 yards total. Stepped over, tried getting back up. I saw him pull up.
We rushed 4 meters rods that night. We got like 156 and something like that. And then the next day we came out to 163 even.
You're listening to the White Cat Outdoors podcast, bringing you to the table where we talk about the outdoors.
I thought that was my beer.
No, just so there's no tomfoolery during the podcast.
There's always got to be tomfoolery during the podcast. What's going on, guys? Tom's just having fun playing with some bottle caps before we get started, just so there's no tomfoolery. I don't know if you just heard that, but so yeah, we're all hanging out. Me, Nick, and Tom. We're recording. What is it?
Coming at you live.
Coming at you live right now, but when you're hearing it, it's not live anymore.
You can pretend it's live.
Yeah, you can pretend.
It's kind of like all those virtual concerts they've been doing this past year.
Yeah.
It's kind of live.
Yeah, you're kind of live. Kind of at the concert.
Kind of
I can't stand that. Like,
oh, yeah.
And people pay like normal concert prices for that sort of stuff.
Well,
like,
speaking of, this is actually a pretty funny. Well, not really. It's not that funny.
Not funny at all. But
it's actually very sad and tragic.
No, it's not.
I don't know what story.
So the other night, our good buddy Flack, he had a birthday this past week. So happy birthday to you. But we were at the bar having a celebratory beer, and this young lady comes up to me and is selling gun raffle tickets. And I was like, hell yeah, bring them over. I'm in. I love gun raffles. And Ben's like, I've actually never been to a gun raffle. And I was like, buddy, they're a blast. Like you pay, sometimes 10, sometimes $20.
It's usually like $10.
Yeah, but on the high end, $20. Like the one that they do at Rainbow Gardens is like $20, but there's way more guns. Anyways, you go, you drink a bunch of beer, eat a bunch of food.
Free beer.
Yeah, after you pay the $10.
Yeah.
And it's a blast. So she comes over, starts off with, it's $50 for one ticket.
Jeebus.
Yeah, I was like, whoa.
How many guns are they giving away?
There was like 50-some guns and a lot of cash prizes, like big cash prizes, like $2,500, like every 10 guns. So it was a big ticket. But the problem was, it was a Facebook Live gun raffle.
For $50.
Yeah, and I told her, I'm like, so I don't even
get to go drink beer and eat food.
And I didn't buy one. I was so upset. I was like, that literally, I was just telling you about how much fun gun raffles are to go to, and now you're telling me that.
Well, the majority of gun raffle, like the money that they make at gun raffles, isn't from the ticket that gets you in the door.
It's all the floor guns.
It's the
and
floor
side
guns
and stuff.
Exactly. So they're really missing out. Like you can't do that stuff on Facebook Live. Like, oh, just Venmo us.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't buy a ticket because it just wasn't the same.
I don't blame you.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have bought one either.
Yeah,
wild stuff.
So, if you're thinking about having a gun raffle, make sure it's in person.
Yeah, me and Nick and Tom will come.
I would love gun raffles.
They're a great time.
So, that was just a little side story.
Yeah. So, what are we talking about today?
Tonight we are going to go over a little bit of pointers, tips, tines
for the new hunter.
Yeah, for the new. Yeah, This video is for kids. If anybody understands that reference, shoot us a message. That would be great.
No one's gonna get
probably not. Wild man out. Anyway, so we've been hunting quite a while. We've learned a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. And I'll just keep this going all night.
Yeah, all night.
Anyways, so we're gonna just cover some things we've picked up along the road, that will hopefully expedite your learning curve when it comes to getting out in the woods. Whether you've been hunting 10 years, 20 years, 1 year. There's probably something we've picked up that you haven't, and vice versa. There's probably things that we don't know.
Yeah.
So, after listening to this, if you're like, hey, that was really cool, but this is how I do something, or this is what I've noticed, let us know and help us learn too.
Mm-hmm.
So, Tom, before we got started with this podcast,
before you even
before
pointed over to me, why don't you tell our listeners where this episode came from?
Oh, yes. This is from our good buddy, Toasty Beard 99. So I reached out to some of our top listeners. So basically in the next few weeks, deer season is going to start. And then the deer camp series fires back up where we just do kill episode after kill episode after kill episode for a couple months.
Yeah.
And it's great because every week we talk about a current kill that we had or a close buddy of ours, top listener, any of those. And it's just a lot of fun. But I reached out to some of our top listeners and asked them, like, hey, season's approaching. Schedule's going to be booked pretty soon with episodes. What kind of stuff you guys want to hear? If you, just what is it?
Yeah.
And Ben was like, hey, I haven't been archery hunting very long, and wanted to just hear some tips and tricks that you guys might have, and thought that it would be good for other new hunters or any hunter in general. Can just kind of share ideas. So thanks again for that tip, or for that idea. And the next coming weeks we're going to have hopefully a lot more listener suggested episodes leading into our hunting season. So
Let's do it.
back to Tom, because Tom was telling me before we hit record that he's got a ton of tips and tricks that he's ready to tell the public. He's been keeping them silent, stuff he hasn't even told me or Frank yet. So without further ado, we'll have Tom jump on the mic and just spill his knowledge.
So my first tip and trick,
Is it a tip or a trick?
it's a tip,
Okay.
is
Just the tip.
yeah, just the tip. Comes from a prior experience. Tip that I wish I would have known last year. And actually, I did know last year, but I'm really going to send it home.
Did
this
you
year.
learn it last year?
No, I always knew it, but I'm like, yeah, this ain't that important. And I really, really wish I would have been following this trick. And I'm going to from here on out because it really bit me in the ass this past year. When it comes to bow season, always make sure your bow is either in your hand or at a point where it can easily be in your hand, ready to shoot.
With minimal movement.
Last year, I'm sitting in my deer stand. I think I've told this story before, but I thought it fit in pretty well for tonight.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there thinking, oh man, leaves are crunchy, cool, frosty morning. I'm going to be able to hear deer coming in from a mile away. So I'm in my tree stand, sitting down, bow sitting across my lap, like totally not ready to draw it back or anything. And I'm just up there comfortable, which that's going to bring me to another tip here in a minute. So I'm just sitting there all comfortable, like, and enjoying the sunrise, and all of a sudden I hear crunch, crunch, and I look over, and there's this shooter buck like 15 yards in front of me. I have no idea how we got there without me hearing him.
Hooves.
Probably his hooves, but he was just there. And there I am, like a silly goose with my bow sitting across my lap. And this buck walks 15 yards broadside right from me. And he didn't know I was there. But his gaze was in my general direction.
You just called the buck gay?
Gaze.
Oh.
Where I know had I moved, he would have caught me out of his peripherals and been gone. So there I am just watching this. And this is a nice buck. This is probably 125-inch, 130-inch 10, who had actually unfortunately got hit by a truck on opening day of gun season.
You hate to see it.
Yeah. So he's just there. I'm watching him, bow across my lap, feeling like a doofus as this buck walks within bow range out of my life. So, like I said, had I been holding my bow in my hand vertically, I would have had a shot opportunity at this deer. But I know it was going to be way too much movement to bring my bow from horizontal all the way to vertical.
And
Draw back. Stand up too, in, like, I like to call it gray light, which is like very first light in the morning, where I think it's your best opportunity at catching a big mature buck on his feet going, to his bedding area. It's totally worth it to be standing, from when you can shoot.
If you prefer to stand when you shoot.
Yeah.
I guess the better way to put that is be in your preferred shooting position, because I'm a sitter when I shoot. So I stay sitting.
For me, it's just, I don't know. Because if you're a sitting shooter, I'm a righty, so it's easier for me to shoot off to my left side. I can't shoot from the seating position to my right side. I don't know if there's a trick to that, but I can't.
No, there's not.
Yeah, that's just an uncomfortable position.
Yeah, I feel like I move less when sitting down.
Oh, you definitely do. But actually, another trick that I like to do is set up so you can't even shoot to
putting that's what I try to do is like there's got to be
side.
some barrier to my right, whether it's thick brush where I can't shoot into, or
so your
a
only
large
shot
tree.
opportunity is to your
Left.
most comfortable shooting side or straight in front of you.
Yeah.
Which straight
But I
in
mean,
front's
like
easy
for
to
me,
do.
prime
sitting.
time, my bow's in my hand, vertical between my legs, the entire time, like during prime hunting times, and then when it starts to get slow, it goes on a hook, but keeps it vertical, just to my left.
One of those hooks that's like an arm that screws out into the tree, and it comes out, and there's like a swivel handle where you can hook it so it's literally
in front of you
versus tight up against the tree.
Yeah,
that
that's
really
money.
helps too. But yeah, so during those crucial, I mean, if all possible, always be in your optimal hunting position. But when
Sometimes you got to take a pee.
when you're hunting, a 4-hour sit, it's pretty challenging to stay in the same position for 4 hours. But yeah, like I said, don't keep your bow across your lap. That's not good policy.
Foolish.
Yeah, really.
But when
boogered
it's
me
one of
up
those
last
things
year.
where you're like you don't agree with it until it happens, or you don't think it's important. I guess maybe you don't think it's that important until
You
it
think
happens. To
my
you.
bow's right here. I can get it up, no problem. Until there's a deer staring at you, and you're like, "How the hell am I about to move that much?"
Like it was literally on your lap. Like you think I've got my bow close.
Yeah.
It needs to be like almost ready to shoot, basically.
yeah,
Yeah, and I'm thinking, my thought process was I'm going to hear this deer coming from a mile away. I have plenty of time to get ready before he's even close.
You heard him from 10 yards away. It's close.
Yeah, that was not plenty of time. I think what happened is I was hunting a creek bottom, and he must have snuck down the creek.
water.
But yeah, so unfortunately, missed opportunity at that buck. Had I been holding my bow and standing, and it was during gray light too. It was, first 30 minutes of light.
just a bonehead move.
Yep.
Yeah, that
Live
kind
and
of
learn.
plays into like my one thing that I was gonna say. We kind of like hinted at it, talked a little bit about it. Every time I get in my stand, like if it's whether it be like a ladder stand or a mobile setup, as soon as I get in, I literally play through every shot opportunity that I think I can have, and I draw my bow at every one of those opportunities, sitting and standing. As soon as I set up. That's what I do every time I get in my stand. I draw my bow at every location that, like all my shooting lanes. I draw
I do that
my bow.
in new sets.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's like a set that...
Yeah, if it's
I-
something I've hunted
Yeah.
15 times, I'm not going to do it because I already know.
But I do play the rangefinder game every
Yeah.
time. Every stand, doesn't matter, unless my uncle had some stands back in the day where he would just spray paint yardages on trees.
That's nice.
But it's been years since I've been able to hunt those sorts of stands. But now, like, as soon as I get my stand, and I don't go to the extent of drawing my bow back, but I range out every potential opportunity several times.
Yeah.
Just
The biggest
figuring
reason
it
why
out.
I like to draw my bow is just because sometimes you're in like there's tree limbs in certain spots, or like your stand, if you're in a ladder stand, if you have to like reach over this side of your stand, I always like to make sure, okay, my limb's not going to hit this tree limb, my string's not going to hit here, like I'm totally clear, and I do a little range of motion out in front of myself just so I know, okay, this is a safe place for me to draw and shoot my bow. I'm good to go.
Well, you never know. I mean, you and I both have had, sub 10-yard shots before where typically when you're setting up your stand and stuff, you think, it's going to be out there 20 yards or whatever, and then the thing shows up underneath you, or basically like your margin of error is a lot smaller that close because you're shooting down. But things get really tight, whether it's your seat, the railing on a ladder, or if you're in your climber, like things get really tight when you start getting, inside 10 yards.
Yeah.
So it's smart to...
Yeah, that's why I like to draw, just so I know if I aim my bow straight down, what am I going to hit with it if I have... Not that I recommend shooting straight down, but it's just...
If that's the shot
it's a
you have
good
to take and you're
practice.
confident. Yeah.
It's just a good practice to make sure that everywhere you might have to put your bow for a shot is a clear shot, not just in front of you, but right where your bow is. Because I've talked to people that have, in different situations. A guy that we know just was it last year or 2 years ago was elk hunting and drew his bow on a bull, and when he shot, his limb of his bow hit something, blew his bow apart, string came off, cables came off, obviously missed the elk because his bow blew apart, but it was because he wasn't 100% aware of everything that could be around his bow in that shot.
That's just another challenge that comes with archery hunting that you won't ever see in a rifle hunt.
Yeah.
Just because, like, it's not just pulling a trigger. It's, your bow, especially, like, your compound bows, the limbs flex so much.
Yeah.
Where, at full draw, it might fit somewhere, but once it's let go, it doesn't fit.
Yeah,
So
and your bow or your arrow is still on that string while those limbs are expanding.
Yeah.
And if you hit something, you're done.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big thing that I have always done is
No, that's
I
good.
set up my stand so that I know where the majority of my shots are going to be. My bow is very easily accessible to basically just draw on that spot and draw on all of the spots so I know I'm safe.
The one buck I got a few years back, I shot sitting down, but I actually had one of those swivel hook,
Yeah.
which I've gone through several of those over the years because I'm horrible about pulling my bow hook out. And I think it's just because part of my process is like lowering my bow down, and then I forget to
that
get the
it was
hook.
once hanging on something.
But anyway, I had a buck that came in, it actually showed up at just the right angle for me to where I literally leaned over, and all I had to do was grab a hold of the bow and move it like 2 inches over so it wasn't on the hook. It was all I had to do. So it was like almost no movement. My body was like hidden behind the bow. I was able to draw back like straight across my chest and let it go, and it worked out perfect.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that people overlook when they're setting up a stand. They look at their shot opportunities
the
farther
cover.
away, but they don't look right on them, right on the tree that they're in.
Yeah. Basically, what you're using is cover.
Yeah.
And if it's going to interfere with your shot.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Because cover is obviously very important. You like to have as much as possible, but don't want it impeding your shot.
And that actually goes to when you're hanging permanent sets as well. Because I remember, Frank, you were actually there when we hung it was a lock-on in this big hemlock we planted a small food plot right on the edge of this beaver swamp. And there was one big hemlock, and we had the stand tucked up there just perfect. Like, you were invisible. And so I go up there, and we're going to cut a few shooting lanes. And I didn't have my bow, but something I like to do is pretend to draw back my bow and see if there's anything that might get in the way. And as I'm pretending to do that, there's this one branch that I thought was going to be perfect cover that you can't draw your bow back because your elbow is going to be hitting on this branch no matter how you slice it.
Yeah.
So we had to end up cutting this branch down.
So there is a way to slice it to make it work.
Yeah, but it was wide open. You
Yeah,
were
it
sitting on
definitely-
on a telephone
I was
pole.
there.
Yeah. After that one branch, it was like, shit, that stand's ruined.
Yeah, but Frank actually ended up killing a buck out of that
I
stand later that year.
And then we took it down the next year or the year after.
It was like 2 years after that because the pine tree grew at like a 45-degree angle. It wasn't quite that bad, but it was not 90 degrees.
It was either you're gonna fall out of it if you put it on one side of the tree, or you're gonna be like
Lazy boy reclining.
and you can't stand up hardly.
Yeah.
It was a pain.
It was a very uncomfortable stand. Very good spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you couldn't move. You couldn't give the deer a reason
I
to
killed
look
my
up.
buck out of where we moved it
Yeah.
the next year or that year.
But yeah, you definitely, if you gave the deer a reason to look up in the tree, they were definitely going to pick you out. But as long as you didn't give them a reason to look up, you were good.
Yeah.
So this is just, I guess, a smaller tip. We don't have to go into it real deep, but it just plays into this effect, especially for guys that like to hang and hunt several times, like that mobile style, is keep a knife or I guess a small saw in your
always.
pack.
Big time.
Because you obviously, if you're hanging a stand for the first time mid-season, you don't have the time to practice that before it's hung.
Yeah.
You know, so once you get up there, if there is a limb in the way,
You need
have
a way
be
to
able-
get rid of
yeah.
it.
I don't recommend if you guys have ever seen those arrow saws, those things suck.
I haven't seen
you can
them.
It
and we can say that because we're not sponsored.
Yeah. Basically, like you would take your broadhead off and it screws into your arrow, and it's a little
That's
saw.
the stupidest thing.
It's
Sounds like a great way to break an arrow.
Yeah.
Did you have one?
No, I just saw the commercial. It's like one of those like fake tree things. It was just I saw it and knew that I would never need to spend my money on it.
Yeah.
You can get a Hui Man or a Wicked Tree Gear saw.
Gerber makes, ones that cost a couple bucks. I actually have a story about. I think I told you this a couple weeks ago.
You'll have to bring that up now that we're on the topic of saws.
Yeah. So I always carried this Gerber saw. It was just like one of those retractable ones that had a little screw on it. And I used it all the time in archery. Every time I did a mobile setup, I always had it. And, if I needed to lop a limb off, I was ready to go. And I had it up in Alaska, and me and a client were out doing something, and he's like, hey, you mind if I use your saw? I was like, yeah, sure, here you go. And he's cutting through this limb, and the blade's kind of thin. It's not for, like, major cutting. It's just for small stuff.
Just like little
branches.
pruning. Pruning.
And I can't remember what he was cutting with it, but I was like, yeah, whatever, do whatever you want. So he's cutting and cutting. He was a really, really nice guy. And he he comes down and the blade binds, and he pushes it back up and just snaps the blade in half. And he felt so bad. He's like, Whitey, I'm really, really sorry. I was like, hey, don't worry about it.
You feel like my grandfather gave me that.
Yeah, just really make him feel bad. But I was like, no, don't worry about it. It was a cheap saw. I can get another one. Don't worry about it. And he brought it up 5 times the rest of the hunt. He felt terrible about this saw. I'm like, dude, it's okay. I don't care. It's not a big deal. And so the end of the hunt comes. I
continued to ask him to saw limbs throughout the.
Hey,
Did you get that cut? Oh, you know what? We don't have one.
Yeah, should have just been a real dick about it. But at the end of the hunt, usually guides and clients always exchange phone numbers and addresses for mailing pictures and whatnot, just to stay in touch and whatnot.
That's how we got Jeb on.
Yeah, exactly. So I give him address and phone number and stuff. And a couple weeks after I get home, I get 6 of those saws in the mail from him. He's like, he sent me a note saying how sorry he was. I was like, I texted him immediately. I was like, you really didn't have to do that. He's like, I just felt bad. He's like, give them to a couple people, keep some for yourself. I was like, I really, really appreciate it, but you didn't have to. It was just a really funny story about that one crappy little saw that I could have bought for $10.
Oh yeah, I think the Wicked Tree Gear ones are $14.
Yeah,
they're really nice.
Mm-hmm. But they are a great tool to have, especially like you said for mobile setups. Always have a saw.
I even keep a little pruning shears in my pack too, which that just if they're about the size of your finger, if that's all you got to cut, it works way faster than a saw.
Yeah.
So
yeah, if I have small stuff like that, I'll just pop my Leatherman out of my pocket, and
every good highwayman has one.
That's what they say. That is what they say.
While we're go ahead, Tom.
I was just gonna say, while we're talking about good things to keep in your bag, I was gonna say I have a bow rope with a carabiner tied to it.
Those
it's
are
always
handy.
Always very handy, because me and Nick, we went through this phase where we're like, you know what, we don't want anyone else hunting our stands. We're gonna make them the biggest bitch to get into.
Yeah, and you definitely did.
We
used to complain
succeeded
about it a lot.
Yeah, so we had these stands that you'd play hell to get into, and believe it or not, nobody else wanted to hunt them because it sucked to get in and out of them.
I would hunt them, but I would complain the whole time.
Some of you literally would run the climbing the pegs right up underneath the platform, so then you'd have to
find
squirrel around the tree and then climb in.
But yeah,
this was pre-harness days. They didn't make harnesses back then.
It was damn near impossible to climb one of these tree stands while having a bow in your hand. It could be done.
You just had to hang it a couple hooks up.
I used to just put my bow up onto my shoulder, through the riser to
safest way possible.
Yeah. I seriously,
yeah.
I'm not afraid to admit I literally would just slide my arm through the riser to between the cables and then climb up that way.
But yeah, much easier if you keep a bow rope tied to a carabiner. What I like to do is when I'm standing on the ground before I climb up, I tie my string to the cam of the bow, and then I clip the carabiner to my belt loop, climb up my tree stand. When I get there, my bow rope's still attached to me.
I do the same thing.
Pull the bow right up.
That's exactly how I do it now.
Mm-hmm. Much better than trying to climb the tree stand with a bow in your. And I did that for Gee,
It's
I don't
one
know,
thing
probably
to do on
6-7 years.
like I know it's never recommended, but like
Yeah.
ladder stands, I never thought twice about it.
No, I
you can-
still do.
You can
with-
climb a
yeah.
ladder with no hands.
Oh yeah, well that's what I'm saying. But then like you get into like climbing steps or like tree pegs are the worst because
Yeah.
you're like straddling the tree to get up the stand.
Yeah.
And yeah, we did
It's
it
just
for
not
years.
safe.
Yeah, we did it for years that way, and then
I can spend 99 cents on a rope and $2 on a carabiner and make this a hell of a lot easier.
yeah, who would have
Worth
thought?
it. Worth the $3.
And then you don't have to tie a bow rope to the bottom of every one of your tree stands.
Yeah.
You just keep it in your hunting bag. And
Yeah, yeah, because some of our older sets have bow ropes up at camp.
yeah, but then the squirrels get to them and they chew it. And
Yeah,
Then you're pulling your bow up and it snaps. You
Yeah.
drop your
I've
bow.
never had that happen. Knock on wood.
I swear to God, one time, it was a couple of years ago. I have no idea how it happened because I had the carabiner on my bow. I hooked it to the cam.
That's
of-
risky business.
How?
I don't like it. I trust my knot more than a carabiner. I don't use a carabiner. I use a knot on my belt loop and a knot on my bow. I like tie the knot to my belt loop at the beginning of the season and it doesn't come off. I just stuff it into a side pouch.
Yeah,
the
I
rest
do
of
the
year.
same thing, and then I have the carabiner for my bow. And pulling up, it was my previous bow, my old Martin, and I was pulling it up, and it got like halfway up, and I had it hooked all the way through. The clasp closed, and bow was coming up normal. Don't know how it happened. Bow came off halfway up. I was like, panic set in. I was like, well, my hunt's done. Like
this was up in Clymer, wasn't
yeah,
it?
it was because I texted you and I told
Yeah.
you.
I remember we shot the hay bales afterwards to make sure she was still on.
Yeah, I like freaked out. I was like, how the hell did this just happen? And so I climbed down. I like look at the carabiner. I'm like, okay, it's fine. Hook my bow again. I honestly, like, I was going to sit out the hunt. I was not going to shoot anything. Like, I was
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
bringing it up again. Comes off again.
What is?
Don't know. I've been using the same carabiner before and after that. Hasn't.
Oh, that carabiner wouldn't have had a second chance.
Well, it goes on my belt now.
Oh.
Yeah, I always go carabiner to belt.
Yeah, I switched it.
I didn't see. I didn't even know the outcome of the story, and I still said how much I trust my knot more than a carabiner.
Yeah, so I put the knot on the bow now, and yeah, I don't know how it happened, but it happened twice. It's never happened before or after. Well, obviously not after, but before that, I did it for years. Never came off with the same carabiner. Twice in 5 seconds, and yeah, so I don't put the carabiner on the bow anymore.
That sucks.
Yeah, it was wild.
Carabiner on the belt loop.
Yeah.
Side note: was your bow like? Did you
Bow was fine.
like you still sighted in and
Yep.
everything? Okay, just
Didn't have
that
to
was just a
adjust it at all.
curiosity thing.
Yeah.
Before Tom rudely interrupted me, I had this tip that I wanted to talk about. We were talking about like mobile hunting and everything, and
Yeah.
something I've explained to Tom that he's going to do this year because Tom just started hunting with like climbing sticks last year. He's been mobile hunting with his climber for years, but finally saw the advantages of climbing sticks and hang on. And before Tom he would hang 2 sticks from the ground, and then he would carry a stick up, hang that one, climb back down, grab a stick, climb back up, hang it, come down, get the stand, go and hang it. I told him, I said, that's taken way too long. Like, this is what you got to do, and this is where the tip comes in. So if you're going to use climbing sticks to hang your stand, what you want to do is get some paracord and just put little loops off the back of your harness that you're using like your lineman's rope for, and you hang your Versa button on your sticks through those. So basically you hang your first 2 sticks from the ground, which depending on how tall you are, I only hang the first one because I'm short. But you hang your whatever sticks you can from the ground, you put the rest of them just on like a paracord loop, and then you climb up and you can just reach back and grab them. So what I do is I hook my bow at the ground, like the rope like we just talked about.
Yeah.
I hang 2 or 3 sticks off my belt, and then my stand is on my backpack, like as like a backpack. So from the time my first foot comes off the ground, I don't have to come back down until the hunt is over.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
So-
I never, like, as soon I can usually hang 2 sticks depending on how I'm going up the tree. Sometimes I only hang 1, but I do the same thing. I leave mine just right on my stand, and then I just reach back, pull one off, hang it, and I keep my all my straps in like a fanny pack in front of me. So I throw the stick up, pull a strap out of the fanny pack, tie it on, go up another step, pull the next one off.
Yeah.
And then when I get to the
It
top, pull the
makes it-
stand off my back. And
Yeah, it makes it almost as fast as hanging a climber.
oh, yeah.
Like
it's-
a climber is definitely faster, but it's not much faster anymore with
yeah, when you
doing
get
it
good
that
at it
way.
and practice it, and
So-
you know like which trees you can really fly up. And
Yeah, so with the extra paracord, when you make your boat rope, put a few loops off your lineman's belt, hang your sticks off the back, and you'll thank yourself because, one, it's way less noise climbing up and down the tree, way less time. It's just all around better.
yeah,
So-
I agree.
It's a good little tip.
Another tip I wanted to say.
Your
was a nice-
face was
A
hilarious.
dramatic pause. Tom was like, it's kind of like playing that game of like, you say numbers in consecutive order, but if two people say the same number, they have to start over.
I have no idea what game you're
We'll
talking
play it after the podcast. It's wild. I don't know how well it'll be with 3 people, but
That's what I felt Tom was doing right there. He didn't
about.
want to
Stone face staring. Next tip.
no, so comfort is key in my book because I know earlier I said, I think your best chance is obviously first light, last light. But for me, and I never even knew this because prior comfort for me was not king. I think the second best opportunity is like that mid-morning from like 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock because I know, and you listen to all kinds of deer hunter podcasts and they'll preach it in one ear, out the other, left and right, like it's going out of business. Deer can't stay in a bed all afternoon long. Mm-hmm. They have to get up at some point, even if it's just to walk
75 yards.
75 yards, they're going to get up and move. And I've found that a lot of the time you'll catch a lot of movement between the hours of like 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock. That mid-morning, deer have been in their bed since first light. It's been 4 hours, 5 hours. They're ready to get up and move again. Mm-hmm. So normally, or I shouldn't say normally, prior to me really considering comfort, I would go out into the woods. I'd have, a pair of jeans and then my camo, and then I'd have a t-shirt, a coat, probably my steel toe boots, and
I rocked steel toes for years.
yeah.
hunting.
And by 8:30, you're freaking numb and you're packing up and going home.
Yeah.
Because you're not having fun anymore. Mm-hmm. And I missed a lot of movement because I was uncomfortable, ready to get out of the woods. And now I spent the money. I got a pair of Under Armour. I don't even know what they're called, but just Under Armour
base layers.
Base layers.
You run synthetic base layers, which that's, I guess, an argument in itself. We could do a
We're not doing a podcast on
you
base
wouldn't.
layer
No,
synthetic versus natural.
No, we don't have to do a whole podcast.
We're
but
not
I'm
even going to do an argument on it.
Just
benefits-
drop it right there.
benefits to both. I like merino and synthetic. I like to do both.
That's great. It's not worth my time to argue it.
I'm bi base layer, if you know what I'm saying.
Perfect. But anyway, so I have my Under Armour base layer. I wear 2 pairs of socks. I used to be like that guy that's like, oh, you use hand warmers? Yeah, I'm too tough for those. Mm-hmm. But I tell you what, hand warmers, foot warmers, yeah, they're the way to go. I slap those babies on and put a couple hand warmers in your pocket, keep your hands warm all morning. I even sometimes I'll throw, if I'm hunting a stand that, the seat's not real comfortable, I have a cushion that I carry in my backpack. Some geese flying in.
Yeah, that's wild.
This is an outdoors podcast.
Yeah, that is not a special effect. That is real.
But I'll throw a cushion in my in my book bag in case, after a while my seat gets uncomfortable. Throw that baby down. Mm-hmm. And I tell you what, if you're comfortable, you hunt a lot longer. Your hunts are a lot more enjoyable, and you see a lot more because obviously the more time you spend in the woods, the more opportunities you're going to have.
And I think a little side bit to that is if you're comfortable, you're not moving as much. Because when you're uncomfortable, you're constantly shifting your body and trying to get comfortable. So it just plays into, like, if you're comfortable, you're not going to move around as much, which means you'll potentially see more because you're not fidgeting all night.
And another thing, very important, if your feet are warm, your hands are warm, and your head and neck are warm, you'll be fine. So it's definitely worth it. I spent some money, got a good hat. I always wear one of those. I don't know what they're the rags. Is that what they're
Gaiters.
called? Gator, a neck gator.
Yeah.
I always
Is
got
yours
a neck
synthetic?
gator.
My dad always calls it a toque.
A toque.
Yeah.
Stringer calls it a dickie.
I don't know. Apparently, it's what they're called. I'm sure there's 400 different correct names for it.
Yeah, you get yourself a nice warm hat, a good toque,
Or a scarf, even.
a good scarf, even good pair of socks.
I like turtlenecks, too. Turtlenecks are...
I need to step up my turtleneck game.
You should. I always rock turtlenecks.
But if you keep your head and neck, your hands and feet warm, you'll be a lot more comfortable doing those long morning sits, or even once the rut kicks in, I like to do all day sits. And I've hunted some days where it never gets above 20 degrees, and you're not going to do that in a pair of jeans and steel toe. You're going to freeze up there.
Yeah.
But it's
don't be too tough. You dress warm and look like a bitch if you have to.
yeah, it's definitely worth it.
Tom looks like the Christmas Story kid up in his tree stand now.
Yeah, and actually, I'm gonna back trail just a little bit. Another good tip is you don't have to wear all of this stuff into the tree stand. Like when I'm walking, if I know I have a long walk, my coat's unzipped. Sometimes I won't even put my wool socks on until I get into my tree stand, because if you got a 400 or 500 yard walk to your tree stand and you're all bundled up, it doesn't matter if it's 10 degrees. You're going to break a sweat when you're walking into the woods, especially if you're trudging through a foot of snow, 2 feet of snow. And what's going to happen is you're going to be sweating. You're going to get up into your stand, sitting still. That sweat's going to freeze.
10
and you're
minutes
going to
later.
be a block of ice. So what I like to do is I'll keep my coat unzipped. Sometimes I'll put my wool socks in my book bag. I'll walk in super slow, careful not to break a sweat. Once I get adjusted into my tree stand, everything's comfortable, slip the boots off, put the wool socks on. They're nice and dry. My feet are dry.
Have you dropped a boot out of your stand yet?
No.
I've done that one time.
I dropped a glove one time. My grandpa made me wait till dark to get it.
I would be climbing down to get my glove.
I was an adult, so I was allowed to do whatever I wanted. I went down and got my boot.
I was like 9. Grandpa's like, we'll get it at dark.
Yeah.
Mind you, this was opening day of gun season. We're doing an all-day sit.
Yeah.
This is early morning, still dark, and dropped my glove. My grandpa's like, we'll get it at dark.
We'll get this at sundown.
After we've had our
So
beverage.
one thing I do I do the same thing as Tom does, but what I do once I'm in my stand is I don't start zipping up my layers until I'm cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until
I do the same
basically
thing.
once I start to get cold, I zip my first layer up. If I start to get cold again, I zip the next layer up, and I just keep doing that because I'm afraid. Like once your heart rate's up and you've been working, if I zip everything up right away as soon as I get in my stand,
still
then
hot.
then you sweat.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Like if there's any people that wrestled out there, when you're cutting weight or just trying to lose weight or anything, after your workout, when you're dressed in all those layers, you're supposed to sit there for 20 minutes in all of those layers, because that's when the sweat really starts to rip out.
Yeah.
So you don't want to just, as soon as you get in your stand, zip everything back up. You wait until you're cold and slowly put your
Dress,
layers
yeah.
back on.
I did that out in Nebraska a few years ago. Sam was completely bundled up, and we had a long walk in. It was probably a mile and a half to get where we were going, and we were hunting a really big block, and we had a very long walk to get to where we were going. And
I'm like one of those public land guys.
Yeah. But all I had was that thin camo long sleeve shirt that I have and a t-shirt underneath it. And Sam's like, "Oh man, you're gonna get cold." I'm like, "We got a long ass walk, dude." And there's a lot of hills and stuff, so I was like, "We got a long walk. It's gonna get hot." And it was pretty cold that morning, but still, I was sweating in nothing. And we got to where we were going, and I actually took off my outer layer because I was sweating, and just let the sweat dry off of myself, and sat there. And like you said, until I get cold, then I throw my one layer on. Then I get cold again, throw the next layer on, because you definitely want to make sure that you are dry before you
key.
really, and cooled down before you really bundle up, because you will get warm again after you throw that layer on.
Oh yeah,
But
that's
if
the
you're
way
wet,
those layering systems work.
Yeah.
It's quality gear. Whether it doesn't have to be camo, just quality gear that's meant for layering is designed to retain body heat.
Yeah.
And as long as your body is staying at 98.6,
You're going to be warm.
Yeah, you'll be warm. So trust the process. And
That's another thing you just quickly said it. You don't have to buy camo.
yeah,
You can buy any color clothing you want. Like in rifle season, you're wearing bright orange. You don't have to wear
I've
camo.
killed plenty of deer wearing bright orange.
Yeah.
I kill plenty of deer wearing a visor with blonde hair flapping above it.
Yeah.
We all do.
Mine's sitting right there.
Yeah.
So
The biggest thing is if you don't give the deer a reason to look up at you, they're not going to look up at you.
Yeah,
And
it
if they're
doesn't
not
matter
looking
what
at you,
color.
they're not going to see you.
Yeah, I don't think camo hurts you by any means whatsoever.
No, it
doesn't
definitely
hurt
doesn't hurt you.
But what I was getting at, you can
Yeah.
save a lot of money by buying gray or black or brown.
Green, yeah.
Yeah, or green. Just those earth tone colors. You don't have to buy the most expensive camo.
Well, and I typically like my standard, like most of the time when I'm hunting, I'm usually wearing it's like earth tone pants
Yeah.
and a shirt, and then it's usually a camo vest. And it's not because I need it to be camo. It's just it happened to be what worked for me. But like I don't wear camo all that often.
I almost never wear. I
have it
brown and black.
Yeah, it all depends on how I need to layer. Like I have my rifle hunting. I have this. I got it off of eBay for like next to nothing, but it's like this huge jumpsuit, and it's a thinsulate. Like it's really
that's good stuff.
super warm, but it's reversible. It's tree bark camo on one side or straight blaze orange on the other side.
That's
So
hot.
during rifle season, you're not missing me.
That's a whole lot of orange.
Yeah, and
Looks
I've
like
killed
CeeLo green up there.
Oh yeah, and I've killed out of that with wearing that, and my bright orange fedora. So
Gotta have the fedora.
we ought to talk about that stuff sometime.
I think we have.
Have we?
Like long time, like first couple episodes.
I'm starting I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to forget what we've talked about. Like
You've
that's
forgotten about stuff. Like you try to bring something. I'm like, we talked about that like 2 weeks ago. You're like, did we?
that could be.
Yeah.
Beers were flowing.
Sometimes they do.
They've been flowing good tonight, boys.
They
I
have.
have. This Yingling Flight's been pretty good. Actually, I'm drinking an all day IPA.
Can you drink it all day?
Oh, easily. Yeah.
I couldn't drink an IPA all day.
No,
I
never
could
in my life.
barely even drink one.
Tom,
I-
just see if this one you could drink all day.
Just take one. sip.
Probably tastes like shit.
Let's get a live taste test from Tom.
He
I was
said,
waiting for him to go. Mm-mm.
Yeah, that tastes like shit.
It's all bad.
Have you ever had like a grapefruit? That's what that tastes like. And I don't care who you are. Nobody actually likes grapefruits.
No, nobody.
I don't think it tastes like a grapefruit. It's got the bitterness of a grapefruit. But
Yeah,
So you're
well,
saying
the
it
only
tastes like
people that like grapefruit are the ones that sprinkle two spoonfuls of sugar on it before they eat it, because it's the only way you can eat it.
I
It's like people
IPAs.
that are like, "Oh yeah, I love coffee," and then they pour their cup of coffee, and it's like half coffee, half creamer. It's like, do you
Speaking
really?
of that,
You don't really like coffee.
I had to get up pretty early this morning. Well, I didn't have to, but I got up pretty early, and I got issues with my eyes, so like I don't see very well in the mornings, and went over to the Keurig, pulled out one of the little K cups, and we've got an assortment of coffee and tea and whatnot. Grab one out of there, slap it in there, and it was still dark in the kitchen, of course.
Why turn a light on?
Yeah. So I get it, and I had some caramel vanilla creamer. Put in there and sit down and taste it. I'm like, whoa, that is sweet. And I didn't put like much at all. Like it was just a little dollop. I made hot chocolate this morning. Totally didn't need the creamer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's wild.
crazy.
That's why I don't drink coffee. I don't even play the game.
I like the
If-
idea of drinking coffee more than I like drinking
Oh,
coffee.
I like a nice black cup of coffee, piping hot.
Tom likes to make oil at camp or on the stove.
Yeah, he does. It's disgusting.
No, it's pretty good. Did I ever share my missed Jake turkey hunt?
I think so, but
Is this going to turn into a tip?
no, it's just
No,
about
well,
coffee.
yeah, it could turn into a tip.
Yeah, don't forget coffee on a
Yeah,
percolator.
if you
on
have
the
a
stove.
percolator, don't leave your percolator on the stove for
It's
4
not
hours.
it's not like a warming pan for your typical coffee pot.
No,
It'll
so
keep perking.
I don't know if I've told this story or not. If I have told it, it's a great story, so you should feel honored. You get to listen to it again. If you haven't heard it, I think it's a pretty good story.
It made me laugh a lot.
So as Frank mentioned, he doesn't drink coffee. Nick likes the idea of drinking coffee more than he actually likes drinking coffee.
I mean, I drink it from time to time, but it usually sounds better at night than it does in the morning.
I, for one, enjoy a good cup of coffee. And I use no cream, no sugar, just straight hot bean
cream?
water.
Hot bean water.
And so me and Frank, we get up to turkey hunt up at Clymer. We're in the headquarters. And we're just new to the whole videoing hunts scene. So I get up, have my cup of joe, and I'm thinking I might have another one. Not sure yet, but I still want it to be warm. Put the percolator back on the stove. So, I had spent...
And it's a wood stove. It's not like a gas stove that we can turn on and off.
No, it's always hot.
It's
as long as
burning a
there's-
fire to keep the cabin warm.
Yeah,
And boy, does it work.
sure does. So, turns out I didn't get up as early as I thought. Didn't have time for a second cup. Me and Frank go into the woods on our turkey hunt. Forgot the coffee on the stove. So... I had these birds figured out. I knew just what they were doing. I tell Frank, this is where we're going to want to be. We're going to be in the business. I don't even know if Frank brought his gun.
I didn't. I was strictly camera.
Yeah, he was working the camera. And, we get set up, and there's not a lot of gobbling on the roost, but there is some. And I'm like,
keeping us
okay,
interested.
there's birds around. I know there's birds around. I think we're going to be good. And I know I've said this in previous podcasts. I don't call on the roost anymore. I don't.
Now, if
I won't do it.
I won't do it.
Unless it's my birthday.
Moral of that is,
Unless they're gobbling really bad, I'll give them a little toot.
if a bird's gobbling on the roost and you start calling to him, how it works in nature is that means that hen is going to come to the gobbler, and that gobbler is not going to fly down until that he sees that hen underneath him. So, yeah, like I said, I don't like to call on the roost anymore. And I wait till I can hear these birds fly down. I knew where they were roosting. We positioned ourselves close enough to where we could hear them fly down. So I'm like,
it was perfect.
These birds are on the ground.
Reading the script, as
Reading
they
the
say.
script. I'm just going to give a few clucks and a few yelps just to let them know where we're at. So, a few clucks, few yelps. Wasn't 5 minutes later, I see this bird coming down the hill right to us. I'm like,
Oh, buddy.
So I let Frank know. I'm like, hey, bird coming. Gobbler.
Camera on.
Yeah, so Frank's rolling, and bird comes down just like clockwork, gets into like 25 yards, and I line up on him, and I mean just squeeze the trigger. Boom! Gun goes off, turkey goes flying. I look over at Frank.
miss.
I'm like, I don't know what happened. And so we watch the turkey. He lands, kind of looks around, walks away.
Visibly unscathed.
Yeah. So walk up to where, the turkey was standing, not a feather, nothing.
Yeah.
Total botch job. So I'm like, well, there's more birds around. We're going to try and get one fired up. So I call, and Woods were
Pretty quiet
well,
after
pretty
that.
well shot. When a shot rings off at 6:50 in the morning,
Yeah.
it usually hunkers them
Slows
down.
them right down.
Yeah.
Dude, there's not much I know, but if it's the way the turkeys move around in Clymer, I do know that.
Yeah. So
Tom and I've got that to a T.
Yeah, we're figuring it out. And so we decide, you know what? We're going to give them some time. Settle down. We'll go back up to the cabin, take a little nap. It's not even 7 o'clock yet. So, we figure, come 10 o'clock, we'll start working some birds again.
Problem is there's usually one flock, maybe two flocks, and they all roost along the same ridge.
Yeah.
So it's not like
you
can't-
blow up one.
Yeah, you can't move around this property and
get on different
Yeah,
birds.
exactly. It's a big piece, but there's really the way the topography works. There's only one area.
spot.
Well, there's just one prime spot, so all the turkeys naturally go to that great
You're
spot.
getting away from the story.
Anyway, so we decide we're going to go back up to camp, take a nap, go back out around 10 o'clock. Well, obviously, I'm upset that I missed this bird. It was a Jake, so I'm like not terribly upset, but like the whole thing's on camera. I think I just choked under pressure. So like I'm pissed, but I'm not that pissed. And we get up to camp, and I see the percolator still sitting on the stove,
Still
like just
perking.
bubbling like crazy, and it's like tar at this point.
Yeah.
And so to punish myself, I decided I was going to drink the rest of this coffee, and it was like syrup thick. It was
gross.
It was very gross, very strong. Was not able to take a nap afterwards. But yeah, moral of that story is don't leave your coffee percolator on the wood stove, and don't miss Jake's at
That's a hell of a
25
tip.
yards.
Yeah. If you're gonna miss a Jake, you gotta put a percolator on the stove for 4 hours and then drink the coffee. That's the punishment.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done. I think I've missed one turkey in my
Oh
day.
Christ, I've missed a lot. I'm getting a lot better. I get so excited.
Like JoJo, the idiot circus boy, with a
funny
pretty
new
new hat.
I don't get as excited shooting turkeys as I do deer.
Yeah.
I lose my mind on
Me
deer.
too.
Like every time, everything happens so fast, and I'm like, what the hell just happened?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the last 5 minutes of your life is a blur. You're like, I saw the buck, and now I'm here. Like I don't know what steps happened, but
I'm like, every time I'm like, did I even look through my peep? Like, did I put my sight on the deer? Like what? Like I don't remember.
it don't matter if it's a doe, a spike horn, or a
For
Big
me,
8.
I have to decide I want to shoot it.
Yeah.
As soon as I decide I want to kill it, that's like my brain's way.
You
of
could look
starting
at that deer
adrenaline.
for 20 minutes and you're like, yeah, whatever. Then you're like, you know what? I'm going to shoot it. Then you're like, holy shit,
Oh,
I'm
I've
going to
done
shoot
that.
it.
I shot
Yeah.
a doe up at camp one time with my rifle, and I saw her out at like 250 yards. And I was sitting in one of the tripods, and I seen her coming through, and didn't get even a little bit excited. I was just watching her come. You know, she was working like through the cornfield, and then there was clover underneath the snow that she was digging at. And I watched her work it, you know, probably for like 25 minutes. And then all of a sudden she got like, she for whatever reason stopped for a really long time, and it was like a perfect shot between the corn stalks. Like I had no intentions of shooting this deer, but she gave me an opportunity, and then I was like, I'm gonna shoot a doe right now. And then it was just like hammered, like
heart pounding.
oh yeah, the adrenaline just started kicking like crazy. And actually, I shit bricks on this because like right as I'm like telling myself I'm going to shoot it, I hear like some grunting. But it's the way that this is like I knew anything I can hear, I can see. It's like a wide open field, and I shot the doe, and then I was like, was that like a button buck? And I didn't like at the time wasn't thinking that like does do make. It wasn't like a grunt. It was just like I don't know, like
a sound.
Yeah, and panicked a little bit. Jeez, Frank.
Jesus, yeah, I'm a little too close to the mic.
A tip for new podcasters: don't touch your pop filter. No.
Yeah, don't do that.
But yeah, it's weird for me. Like Tom gets excited, no matter like if it's a deer, Tom gets excited. Doesn't matter.
I don't even have to be like planning on shooting.
That's
this
what I mean. Like
Yeah.
for you, it doesn't
I
matter
just
if you're
see
shooting
it.
it or not. It sees Tom's excited. For me, once I decide it's gonna get shot, then
That's
it's
when it really kicks in.
um,
And I'm like a little bit of both. I get a little excited anytime I see a deer, but
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not
yeah.
like freaking out like Tom is.
Tom's like
yeah.
shaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'm more like what you're describing.
Yeah, like
Like,
I'm
I'm not
excited
like,
and
eh.
like my heart elevates a little bit, but once I'm like that's the one, then it really goes to a whole new level, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's
But I
good
remember
stuff.
like that spike I shot last year in muzzleloader. I like lost my mind after I shot it. Like I think I called Frank like 3 times trying to get service. Called
Yeah.
Tom. Called like
yeah,
just
because we
started-
don't have good service up
yeah. It was just wild. And then like Tom called me back. He's like, "Is it a buck or a doe?" I'm like, "Oh, it's a buck." And yeah, I could like see Tom running down the hill in blaze orange. Like I could see him from like 150, 200 yards away, just like coming down the hill. And I, like it was more like I watched him fold up. Like I knew it was a perfect shot.
Yeah.
And it was just wild.
there. Glorious.
Which this leads
Which
me
brings
to,
me to my next
Do you
point.
have another tip?
Yes, I do, and this is something that has actually helped me quite a bit with my excitement emotions coming into hunting deer.
Is that a thing?
Excitement emotions, yeah, they're definitely
Sounds
a
kind
thing.
of weird the way you said it.
I definitely get them deer hunting. So you're only going to want to do this tip on deer that you can legally shoot, that you have a tag for, and that it's a legal deer that you don't plan on shooting. So something I like to do is, like, say I'm hunting, I lawfully have my doe tag. I can legally shoot a doe if I choose.
Yeah.
If I'm hunting and I'm not going to shoot a doe, yet I see a doe, I like to, draw back on that deer, get comfortable with,
Containing
myself.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot going on when you're deer hunting, and it's not just as simple as, okay, there's a deer, let me draw back.
Yeah.
You got to, wait for the deer not to be looking to get behind a tree. There's all kinds of stuff you got to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
So,
just practice those situations.
Yeah. I mean, I have zero intentions of shooting this deer, but, if something were to happen where I touch my release and I do shoot this deer,
Still legal.
Still legal. But like I said, it's good to practice. Same thing with a gun. Holding your crosshairs on that front shoulder, just practicing your slow, steady breathing, keeping your crosshairs on the shoulder, not rushing anything. And that has definitely helped a lot if you can go through those motions and control your breathing, control your motions. Because I think you were telling me when you used to hunt in North Carolina when you were just a wee little kid. I'm getting better about this, but I mean,
they
know
nicknamed
exactly.
me Shakes because I missed, we went down there for several years, and the first 2 years we went there, I was, I think, 7, 8, and 9, and I shot at deer every year, but I missed because I would just get so excited that I would just be shaking like crazy. I couldn't hit a damn thing. I was a great target shooter, but as soon as you put a deer in front, I couldn't hit a goddamn thing. It was bad. So I definitely did. That was actually how I got over that. Was the guy that I was sitting with lied to me and said, just practice on that deer. You can't shoot it, but just practice. And so I'm looking down the sight. He's like, you good? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. He's like, okay, well, just practice with your safety off then. I was like, okay. So I practiced with safety off. Then he's like, okay, squeeze the trigger. I'm like, what? He's like, you better hurry up and squeeze the trigger before you start shaking. And I did, killed my first deer, and that really helped me get over the hump of being that excited. And I still get that excited, but now I
can control it.
Yeah.
I think
definitely.
Biggest tip I can add and this only works for bucks, but once you decide you're going to shoot it, quit looking at its head.
Yeah, look at the kill zone.
Yeah, that helps me really calm myself down. A few times I've shot bucks where it was I saw the rack and knew immediately that's a shooter. I don't have to stare at this any longer. Mm-hmm. But one of the deer I killed a couple years ago I knew it was 90% sure it was legal. It was that one that I sent you the picture of it dead and you didn't believe me because it bedded with its head up there. But anyway, I really had to stare at that one, and because I wanted to shoot it, but I was still trying to figure it out, it was just killing me inside.
Yeah.
But once I was yes, it's definitely 100% legal, then I quit looking at its head.
Yeah.
Focus on where I want to shoot.
Mm-hmm. Well, my big Pope and Young buck, that one, I didn't even count points on it. I saw it coming through. I saw a lot going on, and I never looked at its head again. And it happened fast, so I didn't have a whole lot of time. But when I shot it, I couldn't have told you if it was an 8, 10, 12. I knew it had enough points, but I quit looking after that. I was like, okay, it's enough. It's one I want. It's huge. I'm shooting it, and I just started looking at his chest after that.
That was what John did with his. He came back to camp. He's like, don't know what I just killed, but it is big. He's like, it was a stud.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think. I'm about all tipped out.
Are you?
I mean, I'm trying to think. I know I'll think of other ones.
As soon as the episode
as soon as it's over. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think this was more geared towards beginner hunters. Yeah. We don't want to overload them with, scouting and sign tips. This is just for,
I guess just typical setup stuff.
You got a personal experience one. If you do happen to drop your bottle of buck piss, inspect it for cracks before throwing it back in your truck.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
Because buck piss will linger in your truck until you get rid of it.
The truck.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There is
until you
no
get rid
getting
of the
rid
truck.
of the buck piss.
Yeah,
scent.
it is
Yeah.
getting rid of the truck.
And then it'll linger for the next guy.
Yeah, and we luckily Tom totaled it. We didn't go to the
Thank
next
God.
guy. Anyway, but that's personal experience. My dad dropped a bottle of buck piss, and not even thinking, just threw it back in the truck. It cracked on the side, just enough to seep out into the seat. And what a surprise when you got back to your stand.
Yeah.
Or back from your hunt.
Yeah.
Wild.
I think that's a good one to wrap her up on.
Yeah. Make sure you label your urine bottle. I guess with Craig versus Wild, tip of the week, label your urine bottles and make sure you guys are all getting outside.